Hey, it's Mark here from Ripple Training. So first things first, this Friday will be our first Ripple Live show of 2023. Friday, January 13th at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. There'll be a link in the description below. Please come and join us. You can get your questions answered live during the show. Anything about Final Cut Pro, motion, production, really anything goes. And we hope we see you there. We're really excited to get started with the new year. We got a lot of great stuff planned. Okay, so for today, I want to talk a little bit about control surfaces. So usually, if you think about the technology adoption curve, I think of myself as an early adopter for a lot of things. I jump in kind of early and test out new technology. However, when it comes to control surfaces, I'm definitely towards the end of the laggard side. I just haven't tried it. I have not been interested. I've tested a little bit. Way back was the Contour Shuttle Pro. I never had one of those. But things have really changed. The products that are on the market right now are really interesting, whether it's the Stream Deck or the Loop Deck or the Monogram. Great products out there. So I finally have taken the plunge and have something to talk about. Let's dig in. Okay, before we get started, I want to give a shout out to Ian Anderson, who wrote a really great article on Pro Video Coalition about this Monogram video console. Now, his layout was quite a bit different than mine, but if you check this out here, it gives a very good overview of using it and gives you some other data points. I also want to make clear that what I'm doing here is not exactly a product review. I'm just giving you my impressions after using this for a few days. I've had it about a week. I've spent a couple of days with it, and I'm digging it, and I'll show you why as we get into it here. I also just want to show you the this is the website for Monogram, the Creative Console, so you can go there if you want to check it out yourself, and I'll get rid of that. And then my particular layout here looks like this, and this is called the Video Console or the Creative Console Master. This was about $900, so it's not cheap to get all these components, but I think it's worth it. Now, I didn't do anything. This is not sponsored anyway. I didn't talk to Monogram. They don't know anything about this. I paid my own money for this because, like I say, I've been waiting a long time to dive in, and I think the time is now, and I feel good about it so far from what I've been able to do with this. So let's check it out a little bit. It comes with each of these separate pieces that all snap together. This is the core module that drives the whole thing with this little LCD screen. And these all snap together. You might wonder what's going on here. Well, this is a clamp for a keyboard tray that I have down here holding my keyboard. So I needed to kind of work around that, which this lets you do really easily. I'll show you. You can just move this whole thing around. But all these pieces snap on and off. So check this out. Like here's just the buttons, and you can kind of see how it's made, how thick it is. And these are the dials. The dials are cool because besides twisting them, you can press them for an action, and you can press and twist. So really, these will do three separate things. I'll snap those back together, snap those back in, and they light back up. And then this guy, I'll take one of these off here. This is the orbiter, and it has an outer ring that moves continuously. And then this inner thing is kind of like a joystick where you can press on different sides. And this is really great for color correction, as we'll see. And you'll see why I opted to get all three of the components here. So you can see how they all work together. Now, I do want to bring up a different layout here to show you the software, because this here is the software that you use to set it up, where you load profiles. You can use existing profiles or download ones from other people and bring them in, or create your own. And this is the default one. You can see here it says Media Control. So by default, if you're on this one, if you're using Apple Music or Spotify or playing an audiobook, whatever, you can change your volume and previous track and next track and play and pause and mute from this, which alone is a cool thing, which I really dig. So great starting point. But really what I wanted to show you here is while this is up, watch what happens when I take a couple of these off. They disappear. I'm going to take them apart and I'm going to swap them around, okay? Just so I keep everything in the scene here. But you could stack these in anywhere you want. They can really go anywhere. But I'm just going to swap them, plug them back in, and you'll see it immediately reconfigures the software. And those components still do the same thing that they did before, just in a different location. So I love how modular this is. I love how responsive it is. I love how firmly everything stacks together and snaps together. It's really fantastic. So with that being said, what I want to do is take a look at Final Cut Pro. By the way, if you hear some thunder, we're having crazy weather here in San Francisco today. Thunder, lightning, rain, hail. It's just absolutely insane. But now I want to talk about using this with Final Cut Pro. And the first thing I want to show you about that is Command Post. So you will need Command Post. You don't have to, but it's the way to get the most out of this. And it's funny because, I want to be on screen for just a second here. I think I can do it right here. Yeah. So I have avoided Command Post for a long time. I'm not really sure why. I thought it was going to do something to Final Cut Pro in a weird way or something. And it's ridiculous because it's a great product. Command Post is a free open source piece of software developed by a great guy, Chris Hocking, who's continually developing it and doing a lot of other cool tools, by the way, which we'll talk about in another episode or 2 or 3. But with Command Post installed, it talks to the Monogram and it talks to Final Cut Pro and lets you use it in a very sophisticated way. So I just wanted to put that out there that you want to install Command Post if you're using this. So let's go back to this layout here where you can see this interface and you can see Final Cut Pro. Now, as soon as I click on Final Cut Pro, watch this right here. I'm going to click on Final Cut Pro, so it's the active application, and immediately I switch to a different profile. This is the editing profile. If I have more than one profile for this application, I can go between them or among them by tapping either of these buttons here. But we'll start with editing. You'll also notice that if I bring this interface up here, you can see what's assigned for editing. I don't have a lot of stuff assigned for editing here because I'm really focused on color correction, but I wanted to give you a sense of what you can do with editing. The other thing I want to show you is you don't need to have this up here. You might think, well, I can't see any labels on this, so I don't know what does what. So you might want to leave this open, but there is another option. So I'm going to move this back down, and I'm also going to go back to this layout because what I want to show you is when Final Cut Pro is active, if I tap and hold either of these buttons, you're going to get this overlay that pops up. In my case, I have 2 screens, so it's popping up on my other screen, but this will just pop up and it's kind of a quick reference to remind you, oh yeah, automatic speeds over there. Oh, volume's over here. So it's an easy way of doing this. You don't need to leave the app open all the time to do that. So with that being said, let's take a look at some of the editing functions here. So I'm here and I've got editing, you can see right here. And a couple of things we can do is a simple thing is play, so I tap here. Sorry, I know that's very loud, but now that I've played it a little bit, I can use this dial to adjust the volume. You can see that volume drop down, play. Okay, so that's just mapped to volume. I can also jog with this dial here. So let's say I want this to start more about here, right when he's coming into the shot. I have trim start and trim end mapped here and here. So I'll trim start, then I can jog down towards the end of this clip. Let's say that's enough right about there. And I can trim end by tapping here. So I've adjusted the volume and I've jogged. I can also jump from clip to clip. So I've got next clip and previous clip that will jump the playhead to it and select that clip. On this clip, this is these all are actually, it's a 4K clip and a 1080 timeline, and frequently you want to reposition those clips, scale them up and reposition them because you've all this resolution to work with, you need to reframe them. So I have some mappings here. This dial here is mapped to scale, so I can scale this clip up, and then these 2 dials will handle horizontal positioning and vertical positioning. I can quickly reposition and scale that clip. What I love about this, if I change my mind, if you just press on each of these, it'll undo those particular changes. So I undid my position and now I'll undo scale. Super easy to do. So I can really see where this could save some time when you need to reposition a bunch of clips in a 1080 timeline with 4K clips. I'm going to go ahead and go to the next clip. And in this case, I'm going to apply automatic speed. Now, usually, I go into Final Cut, go into a little pop-up menu for the retiming and choose automatic speed. It takes way too much time. And I know you can map it to a keyboard shortcut. In fact, you have to in order to assign a button to it. So to me, the advantage isn't so much like, oh, it's a button instead of a keyboard shortcut, except that sometimes keyboard shortcuts require you to take your hand off the mouse because they take two sets of hands. And this way, I've got my hand over here already, and if I just tap on this key right here, automatic speed is applied. It's a 60p 60p clip in a 24p timeline. So now if I press play, you'll see that that clip will now play in slow motion because it's a 60p clip and it's got automatic speed applied. So just a couple of ideas of what you can do with editing. I haven't got that far with that because I've really focused on color correction. So let's switch to that now. I'm going to go to a previous clip to go back to the start. I'm going to tap here to go to my color correcting profile, and you can have as many profiles as you want. I call this one color wheels because I focused on the color wheels. I accidentally touched something and you saw color wheels appear right here, but they're actually not applied. If I go here, you can see there's no color wheel applied yet. And I just want to show you what's possible here. This is, to me, this is the most exciting thing about this. I keep touching something, so I apologize for that, or bumping the table. So first thing I'm going to do is these buttons here, one's set to hide the browser. So I have more screen real estate, don't need the browser. And this button here will bring up my scopes. So super fast and easy to set the interface. And yes, you can do a keyboard shortcut, but I love having them here because I'm going to be working here already. Now, shadows, midtones, highlights. Okay, that's where I've mapped each of these orbiters. So if I just touch this, watch the inspector over here. If I just touch the outer ring, immediately the color wheels effect gets applied, enabled, and notice that I'm affecting the brightness of just the shadows by dialing here. So I love this. It's just bang, you're at work. And I find this really a pleasant thing to adjust. When you're working with kind of adjusting, looking at the waveform, you can adjust the sensitivity of these too. So I'll do the shadows, I'll bring the highlights up, something like that. I can adjust the midtones. You can see them each changing the inspector and in the waveform, and of course in the image, the most important part. Just works really great. So shadows, midtones, and highlights for luminance. That's usually where you start, right? Get your dynamic range dialed in before you do anything with color. Now, let's say I want to do something with color balance. That's what these interior, I'll call them joysticks, are for. So on the shadows, if I want to get a little more coolness in the shadows, maybe I'll just push over towards really the opposite of blue cyan, which will push that into the shadows there. Here, I'll bring it back and bring it forward. You can see that working there. You can do the same thing in the midtones or the highlights. So now what my goal here is to bring a little bit of warmth in the highlights. So I'm kind of popping that up a little bit. A little warmth in the highlights and cooling down the shadows. For example, this is not a color correction tutorial, but just want to show you that you can adjust the color balance of shadows, midtones, and highlights separately, and I think a little easier than using a mouse in the Final Cut UI. You may wonder, well, that's great. What about saturation for shadows, midtones, and highlights? Well, that's what these are for here. So check it out. This first one will dial in my shadow saturation. So I may want to pull any color cast out of the shadows. I can touch my midtone saturation there and my highlight saturation. We try to get a little more color in the sky, for example. So we've been able to control every aspect of the shadows, midtones, and highlights wheels, brightness, saturation, and color balance. So what about the global one? Because often you would actually start with global if you have an overall, say, exposure issue. And that's what I have these mapped to right here. So this first one will do master saturation. So you can see I can I'll go crazy, dial it way up. You can see up in the vector scope, it's just crazy, but I'll pull that back down. Then if I press and turn the same thing, I'm affecting brightness. And this is totally up to you in terms of how you map this. In fact, if you like this mapping as a starting point, there's a link below where you can download it if you're using this Monogram, the same number of components in any layout, and you can import it and use it as a starting point. So that was saturation and brightness. And for color balance, the wheel below this, if I just turn it, notice I'm moving the puck in the global wheel only horizontally. So basically between blue and yellow, which gives you a control that's a little difficult to do with a mouse. So if I really want to adjust that, blue level, if you look in the waveform, I have really good control over it on a global basis right there. If I press and hold on that, I'll go just vertically, and I'm doing exactly the opposite there. So you can't do both well, I guess you could do both at the same time if you use two separate dials, but I kind of like doing this separately like this. I'm not sure I'm going to keep it that way, but so far it works. But I just want to show you that you're able to control every aspect of the global shadows, highlights, and midtones with all this. There's some more though. If you look below the wheels, there's temperature, tint, and hue. And I've mapped those to these right here. So this top one will control temperature. I'm just going to move it a little bit. The next one will control tint. And the next one will control hue. With hue, if I change the hue and I want to go back, I can just press on it to reset it. I'm not able to press on these to reset them, tint or temperature, and that's because I have them mapped to other functions right now, and actually we need to reset those. But normally you would just, if you didn't like your temperature change, you just press on this and it would reset it right to its original value. Finally, there's a mix slider at the bottom, and I have that mapped to this guy right here. So if I just want to dial back my correction, I can just pull back on it. Sorry, it's this one right here. By dialing on that, and you can see I can pull that correction all the way out or just put it in a little bit. And really the last thing in terms of this overall correcting just with color wheels is you want to toggle that on and off. You don't necessarily, which normally you would do with a mouse. You'd come up here and click this color wheels checkbox on and off. But I mapped this key right here, so I can just tap that key and there it's off. And there it should be back on again, and it's not. Oh, you know what I did? I'm going to undo that. Sorry. I actually had that mapped to, still learning this, I had that mapped to remove effects instead of undoing that. So what I want to do instead is toggle color corrections on and off, which is right here. So just wanted you to see where that is. So instead, if I click here, that's off and that's on. You can see the checkbox going off and on. So obviously I'm still learning this and trying to figure out what's best, but I wanted to see if I could map every function of color wheels to this device. And you can see literally everything is mapped to it, which to me is super cool. Now, I want to go to the next clip. So I'm going to click here, which will go select my next clip. And one thing we didn't talk about was auto balance. So I do have a balance color mapping to this key right here. So if I tap that, that'll toggle on balance color and toggle it off again. Say I don't like it. But let's say I want to apply the grade I just made to this clip. Well, I've got apply from one clip back mapped here to tap on this dial or press on it, and I've got mapped 2 clips back to this one. So for this one, if I just tap on this, it'll take that correction and apply it to this clip. In this case, we don't want that. It does not look correct at all because it wasn't shot in the same scene. But the idea is if you're moving to a clip where you want to apply it forward, super easy, press one button, it's done. I'm going to click Remove Effects to get rid of that on that clip there. So just a couple of ideas of where I see this happening and how it's working for me, but I am super excited about the possibilities of working with this Monogram video console. As always, we'd love to know what you think, so please leave us a comment below. We'll see you next time here on MacBreak Studio.